You want to first make sure that you are drawing your reference photo, okay? Don't just make squares that go in a line around the lip, under the lip. That is incorrect. Often teeth, as they go back, see, as they come back, they get shorter, right, in distance from the gum to the bottom of the tooth. So we need to reflect that. So you want to pay attention to that. Some people's teeth are crooked. They're not all perfectly straight, so we want to reflect that as well. Maybe some teeth are missing. We don't know, right? So we have to go by our reference photo. Be very careful. We have a tendency as human beings to just, when we draw something, like we're drawing a face, we want to make a circle. For the nose, we want to put 2 circles here and kind of draw some lines up for the nose. We want to make the eyes, you know, maybe we'll make some ovals for the eyes and throw some eyebrows on. And then the lips, we just draw on the lips like your typical, like from kindergarten, and then we draw in boxes for teeth. Okay, that's because that's what we feel like is supposed to happen. And I think it's just very habits from when we're little. So we want to break that. We want to go by our reference photo. So you want to have a reference photo and you want to copy that. The other thing is you really don't need pencils for teeth, okay? I've talked in the past about a tortillon. That's this little guy. It's basically rolled paper. You can buy them at the stores, and they come in all different sizes. So they can come really small, you can get thicker ones, you can get even bigger ones. But they typically have a blunt bottom here, right here, and then a point, okay, and they're rolled. You can't really sharpen these or anything. Once they're done and they get kind of old, just toss them and you get more. You can create the same thing by rolling paper, and I'll show you how to do that. That sounds funny. Don't get any funny ideas, guys. I'll show you how to do that in another video. But you can, these are really cheap. They're like $1 for a little pack of them. You can get them anywhere. Here they are. So I just pick them up from Michael's. So you can just get different ones. I also buy them in bulk on Amazon because they're cheaper. But I buy a lot of them and I just keep them in a bin. So we're going to use this to shade our teeth. So when you're drawing teeth, you don't really want to sketch them out. When you're first drawing your portrait, you're going to sketch with a very light pencil and not a hard pencil. And what I mean by that is pencils or graphite or charcoal comes in different hardness. So you'll hear like 2B or 2H. So a 2H has a very hard point. Although it's light, it's got a very hard lead. And what can happen with that is it can actually gouge the paper because it's almost too hard. So if you have a heavy hand and you're drawing the line, even though the line will be light, you might end up gouging the paper, and that's a little more difficult to deal with, which we'll talk about another time. So the best pencil to use for teeth, a very light touch, is an HB or a 2B. So I'm going to flip you guys around now and talk to you about how I do this. So here is the one I'm working on. Let me see. Hopefully you can see that. So this is Mr. Kendall. Kendall passed away and he's no longer with us. It's a memorial portrait, but we want to make sure we get his teeth done right. Okay, so I've got my reference photo here. Now you can notice on Mr. Kendall, it's not a great photo, but we'll work with it. But see what I was saying about his teeth? Look at, he's got a space here. So that's important to capture. As his teeth come back, they're different heights down here. So we want to make sure we capture that. And the way his head is turned causes them to be at different angles. Like this tooth is showing more than this side of the tooth, right? So we want to be sure we get all of that. So I've drawn him out, and you can see how very lightly I have his teeth drawn. You may not even be able to see the lines, and that's good. So if you draw them out and they're too dark, just take an eraser and lighten them up a little bit, okay? So the first thing I usually do, and this isn't how you have to do it, but I typically will, let me get a piece of scrap paper. I will typically load up my tortillon, so I will get, you can use charcoal or graphite, it doesn't matter. I'll load up my tortillon here, put some graphite on it, and I'm going to start to put the gums in, okay? Now his gum line is not much is showing. See on the reference? We have a little bit right here, very little bit here, and I know it's hard for you guys to see because the picture's not awesome, but I know because I've looked at it a few times, and very slight little bit showing here. So there's not a lot to do on him, but I will start to put that in. So I'm just going to take my tortilla and just start to put that gum line in, okay? So I'm just very lightly with my tortilla putting in those spaces, putting that in. And it comes up on the tooth here a little bit. And then over here on this side. So we've got the start of a gum line. I'm going to put one in very light right here. And usually the gum lines are darker than the teeth. So we don't want to make the teeth as dark as this. Now I used a, the graphite lead I used was pretty dark. It's a 5B. I typically would probably use more like a 2B or 4B. But I know overall I'm going to be getting this whole picture darker and darker. So this is kind of, I'm okay with going in kind of dark right away. If you're not comfortable with that, go to a lighter color, a lighter value, and just pencil that in. So I'm going to use my tortilla for all of this. Okay, I'm not going to use my pencil at all. So now I'm going to look at my reference, and you can see here on my reference, he's got some shadows. And that's how I'm going to define my teeth, is by the shadows and the change of color on his tooth. And that's what's going to make them start to look 3D, is by adding the value around the tooth. Now, in this particular photo, he's got highlights here and here, a little highlight there, and some over here. So I'll try to preserve those areas lighter than the rest of the tooth. So I'm going to go ahead and start putting some of this in. So we're just going to start, if you feel like it's too dark for the tooth, you can wipe some of the graphite off on a scrap piece of paper and just kind of clean it up a little bit. Or you can use your kneaded eraser and lip some of what you put down off of the tooth. So I'm going by it's a little slow because I am watching my reference photo. I actually watch my reference photos more than my actual drawing. It's a habit I've gotten into where I look at my reference photo more than I actually am watching what I'm drawing. So I find my placement, I draw some strokes, and then I look back up at my reference just to be sure I'm still drawing what's actually there and not what my brain wants me to think is there. Because that's what it does to us. It makes us think something's there that isn't. We can kind of get lost, right? We can kind of get really into what we're doing and we forget to look up at our reference. And then when we're done, we're like, huh, it doesn't really look like that person. And that's why. So see how light I'm doing this? But see how they're starting to pop out already? Sometimes too, teeth are darker at the bottom than at the top, and sometimes they're darker at the top than at the bottom. So you got to watch for that too. Now I don't have the lips drawn in, but I know that there's going to be a shadow from the lip on these upper teeth. Just from experience, I know that. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in. Even if my reference photo isn't really showing it, I know it should be there. There's certain things that you kind of compensate for after you've been drawing for a while, just to make things seem realistic without taking away the characteristic of the person, right? So our lip will always cast a shadow on our teeth. There will always be a little bit of a shadow from our upper lip. So I'm going to keep going around this tooth, just very lightly. So to start, you start real light, and then you can always go back as you layer your drawing and add value if you need to. But this is basically how I do teeth. They're very simple. There's not a lot to it, and it's basically using a tortilla instead of a pencil. You can do this with a pencil. It just takes a little longer, and you have to be lighter handed. So that would probably be my final edits, like when I'm all done, is to go in with a light pencil and just touch up and fix or get the, I don't know how to explain it, kind of like lines put in where I need to, define, I guess, better where I need to, but I wouldn't outline anything. I do not outline. So now on this tooth, I'm going to bring a little bit of shadow over, a little bit more, because that's what I'm seeing. It's a little light there, but then the shadow continues on this side of the tooth onto this tooth, because it's a little tiny, tiny, tiny bit of an overlap there. So I'm going to bring this down. Often too, teeth are rounded at the bottom. They are not squared off. So you want to watch for that as well. That's what I was saying about the chiclets. You don't want to just make squares for teeth. That's not how teeth actually are. And when you're drawing, when you start drawing, start noticing, like as you're talking to people, notice how their teeth are. Notice the ridges that are in them and stuff. Stare at them. Haha. Even though you're not supposed to stare at people, right? That's okay. Say, I'm sorry, I'm learning to draw. I'm just trying to be accurate. Let's see here, I got an issue. So, it looks like that's a tooth. Okay, so this one, when I originally drew it, I actually drew it incorrectly. This back tooth here is smaller than this one, and I had it reversed. So that's another reason why looking at your reference photo while you're shading and stuff is always good too. So you can compensate for any errors. So can you see how we're starting to get some teeth going? I know it looks a little weird because we don't actually have the lips in, but so I apologize. I'm going to do lips separate because I don't want these videos to get too long. So when I'm ready to do lips, I'll pull you guys in and show you how I do the lips. But teeth are always a big, everybody has questions about teeth. So I thought, oh, well, I've got these beautiful teeth here with this gorgeous smile. I might as well show them how I do it. So I'm putting my shadow above the teeth where the lip is going to be. And then down below here on my reference photo are some dark shadows. So I'm going to put those in. And dark here, real dark, and then dark over here. And you can notice the shadow as it goes back, the teeth, they get darker, they get grayer because there's shadow on them. So we need to make that too. So I can get some more graphite on my tortillon, and then back here I can kind of darken this tooth up a little bit because it's going to be, as it goes back in the mouth, it goes into shadow. So it's not going to be as white as these other ones. And if you're doing this very light, you don't have to worry if you get a tooth too dark. You can go back in and lighten it. So right now, you guys might be like, wow, that's really dark and it looks weird, but it's not. By the time I get this whole thing done, it'll be fine. It'll match. So I'm going to keep bringing this up. There is a little bit of a highlight on this tooth. And then it kind of comes down this way. This one's got a nice highlight, but he does have some darker color here. Down around here, especially at the bottom. So we'll start getting that in. And then, like I said before, this is his gum, but he's got this really, really dark space because there's nothing back there. So I can put that in. And like I said, this is going to look weird because we don't have everything around it rendered. So expect that it will look a little strange. So now we got our space in. I'm going to add some dark back here under these teeth. We've got a shadow here underneath that sits on the lower lip. And I have a shadow over here that kind of comes up into the space. Whoop, I need more graphite. So this kind of comes up here like that, and then like that. And then back here which you can't really see right now but this lip in here will be a little darker. This space. So right along this edge is darker. So we're starting to get some details. Can you guys see that? I hope everybody can see what I'm doing. I hope you're able to see this. I'm hoping too, when I switch to my YouTube account, I'm going to be saving up for a better camera and a better setup so that I can show you guys while I can also see you guys. So if you have questions and stuff, I'll be able to answer you while I'm doing my demo. So I'm going to darken this up just so I remember, just so I know that that's my dark space and that's gum. The gum is actually much lighter than the dark space. I'm going to throw in some detail over here. I've got some shadow for the lip over here. I'm not sure. It looks like this tooth is in front of his bottom lip, so we'll take care of that later. It's actually sitting in front of his lip or right on it, so that'll be shown. See how this is actually the bottom lip that goes behind the tooth. So we're gonna have to show that. And then down here, this tooth is a little crooked, so here we're gonna darken this up. There's a shadow from sitting on the lip. So we got that. And then this is a little darker up here. So we got that. And then over here, I'm going to put a little more darker here. Like that. There. So we're definitely starting to get some definition. Now, in between here, this space is very light. So I'm not going to put a whole lot of pencil or graphite down. So it actually goes almost white in between there, like a highlight. So we're just going to kind of keep it like that. And then there is definitely shadow down here. And it kind of comes up the tooth here from the bottom and around. And then this tooth has a shadow right there where it kind of curves back into the mouth. So kind of like that. There is still a shadow. I didn't get the shadow here and here. And we're going to put some, just a little bit of shadow here. Not much, just a little bit. I actually want the darker shadow on this tooth. So I'll darken that up just a tad, like that. Okay, I'm not going to do the whole thing because that will just bore you guys to death. It's a long process. It's going to take time. But I will show you real quick a couple more things. So, don't be afraid of teeth. The other thing you can do, just to tone down the teeth as a whole, is take your paintbrush. Make sure it's pretty clean. You don't want it dark. You don't want a lot of... So when I say pretty clean, what I do is I just rub it on some paper, get some of the graphite off. It's still got stuff on it, so it's fine. I don't have to add any. And then I can just kind of go over the teeth, and that will tone them right down so they're not bright white like the paper. Teeth should not be bright white, okay? Just like the whites of eyes should not be bright white. They never are, unless they've gone and done some crazy teeth whitening. So, see how that tones that right down? And then I would go back in and work some more. Now, if you feel like you've toned it down too much, you can take your eraser and just pull some of those highlights back out. So you can just pop some white areas back out in a more controlled way. So the highlights serve as to show that there's moisture on the teeth, which gives it a realistic look. Okay, so you do want to make sure you keep your highlights, but you don't want them like standing out like super white circles or anything like that. You want to go by your reference. It's going to serve for the moisture, and it gives it some definition, some depth. So back here I lost my little tooth a little bit by using the paintbrush, so I gotta put my highlight back in, and then I'm going to go back in real quick and just define that line there. So it's right here. So okay, so I'm not going to do a whole lot more right now because, like I said, it's a very long process and I don't want you guys to have to sit here through it. So I'm going to keep working on this and I'll show you the result when I'm all done. So I'm going to flip you back around. Hello. Nobody has questions, so I'm going to jump off. If you do have a question later, or you go to do something like this and you have questions, just drop me a comment, not a problem. And remember, go to my YouTube and subscribe so that you guys, I love having you guys around and I'd love to talk to you some more. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.